let's discuss, because it's frustrating when you see, shout to our girl Kay Adams, and you see the NFL Network peeps deriding, to put it nicely, this Lions team coming into the year. I mean, let's be fair. Do you want to start with the history? Maybe we could start there. So full disclosure before we kind of delve into this year's.
Why are you pressing that button?
Because we have to. Now, I will start here. Matt Dery is a Cleveland guy that's now been in Detroit for 25, 28 years. So he is through and through Honolulu blue and silver. But why don't we set this up? Why it's such an anomaly that the Lions are being jocked heading into a season when we're talking about a franchise that's won one playoff game since 1957. The floor is yours, Dery.
Well, I mean, I'll say this, fellas, and Patrick knows it. I mean, you're right. The prime example was the second day of training camp when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, their big free agent signee, and really it was a coup to get him, goes down holding his leg and has to be carted off. And you're thinking, oh, my gosh. And Patrick knows this term, it's SOL again. It's same old Lions. They're just going to, something's going to happen like that. Turned out it was a minor injury. He's been back in the field, and he's been fantastic. But, yes, the history is not on their side. And for the first time, and Patrick, I wish you'd come home and feel this. For the first time in who knows how long, yes, they've had playoff teams. Jim Schwartz had playoff teams. Bobby Ross had playoff teams. Your boy, Wayne Fontes, had playoff teams. Jim Caldwell took teams to the playoffs. But the feeling in this city right now about this particular team, and the fact of the matter is, and I watch your show, the NFC is bad. The Lions have a chance here to win 10, 11 games and maybe win a playoff game. And the fans believe here, many of the experts believe this is the best team in the NFC North. And I happen to agree. I'm not saying they're world beaters, but look at the competition. I think this is their year to do it.
Yeah, I think there's no question.
Can I ask you a question, Jared?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Before you get into your analysis of this year's team, because we're so close to it, Matt and I, that we don't really have a gauge. As somebody that grew up in New York, can you give us your perception growing up of the Detroit Lions? I'd love to hear it.
Not great. I mean, and I grew up in a time when I was just getting into football, my formative years, let's call it the mid to late 90s, there were some good Lions teams, right? I remember the Herman Moore years, very good offenses. And, of course, I was a little young for Barry Sanders, but I caught the back end of that. But that's where I kind of, gravitate the analysis towards. I have no debate at all that this offense is going to be legit. I love Ben Johnson. The offensive line might be one of the best in football. Say what you want about Jared Goff. He could be a punchline sometimes, but I think the synergy with him and Ben Johnson and the weapons that they have, I love what they did in the draft with Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that's kind of a missing piece, kind of the cherry on top to what should be a very productive offense. The questions are all on the other side of the ball. Aaron Glenn now, the defensive coordinator, and growing up in New York as a Jets fan, watching Aaron Glenn get toasted in man coverage schemes throughout my childhood, he's taken that kind of boom or bust mentality to the Lions. They play a ton of man coverage, and they're not a great secondary. Well, they've tried to address that. You mentioned Gardner-Johnson. They also brought in Cam Sutton. So I think the secondary will be better this year. I like what I saw up front last year, especially from Hutchinson. I think they've got some pieces that can contend. The question is, can this secondary hold up in what, you're right, is a bad NFC and I would say, weaker NFC North. But it's all on the defensive side of the ball for me, Matt.
I think Jared brings up some good points. The secondary is much improved. And I want you guys to circle a name, and that's Brian Branch, who the Lions traded up to get at number 45 in the second round. He has been fantastic. Now, again, it's training camp in the preseason. How many times, and Patrick knows this, dating back to Kes McCorvey and Miles Masick and Johnny Johnson, all these stars from the preseason that never amounted to anything in that Honolulu blue and silver. But Brian Branch is real. He's really good. You throw Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the mix. You mentioned Cam Sutton, Tracy Walker, and Kirby Joseph. There is some depth in that secondary, both the corner and safety spots. To me, Aidan Hutchinson has to take that next step, get to the quarterback even more. They've got some nice pieces on the edge: James Houston, Charles Harris, Romeo Okwara. So the defense is going to be better. It was really bad the first 7-8 weeks last year, so much so that, as I like to call him, future head coach Aaron Glenn was on the hot seat. And then they improved. They won 8 of their last 10, and they really got after, if you guys remember, in Week 18, they got after Aaron Rodgers and won that game with their defense. So that is an improvement there. I'm a little worried about the kicking game, especially at place kicker. No problem with Jack Fox, their punter. We'll see about that. And as Jared said, their offense is really, really good. The question is, will the Gibbs and Montgomery duo be better than what Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift gave them last year? And I think they can end up doing that.
Locked On Lions is the podcast. Matt Dery is the host. We're talking the Lions, of course, with Matt. Okay, well, we buried the lead. Let's talk about the head coach. You're a good judge of character. You're a good judge of human. Let's talk Dan Campbell, who's become like a cult figure. In game, he's a freaking disaster. We can start there, no?
I mean, here's the thing. And Patrick, you're not wrong, especially the first half of last year, that Minnesota game on the road. You have an injured kicker in Austin Seibert, and you elect to kick a 49-yard field goal after you had gone for it on fourth down all game. And then that led to a short field for Cousins, and Minnesota wins that game. And it probably kept the Lions out of the playoffs last year, that bad loss, which Campbell at least afterwards admitted, I messed up. As the season wore on, some very good play calls. He gets a lot of help from Ben Johnson, his OC. His defensive coordinator is good, like you said, with Aaron Glenn, I think is better. And he's got a good special teams coordinator. He's got a good staff around him, Patrick, so that helps. The question I think you bring up is very valid. In these tight games, week 1, Lions-Chiefs, primetime, Thursday night, in front of everybody. Is he going to do the Dan Campbell 4th and 4 gamble at his own 30, give Mahomes a short field if it doesn't work? And then are we all going to be questioning it on Friday morning? That's the question. We know what he's done for the culture, the locker room, the city. He is the most popular sports figure probably in Detroit right now. Question is, you're right, those decisions late in games, those fourth down calls, is he a gambler where it comes back to bite him? Or is it smart and concise and precise and they get the job done?
Has he been anti-analytics with a lot of those decisions? Because a lot of these coaches these days, they have either someone in the booth or someone near them that has basically a list of plus EV moments to go and not go, and all of those decisions based off of the outcome of the game. I see the probabilities pop up on some social media feeds throughout the course of an NFL Sunday. Oh, they should have went here, they should have punted, etc. He seems like an old school guy. You know him a little bit better. The analytics-based decision-making process, that's just not something he's interested in.
No, I think it's a mix of both. I mean, when you think about analytics in the NFL, I always kind of refer to my guy Cleve TA, who I think does a great job with it. And I know TA loves when Dan Campbell does go for those fourth downs on the opposing team's 40 or 35 and not kicking those long field goals. And a lot of those worked last year, especially with the Ben Johnson play calls, the utilization of the tight end. Remember that fourth down call in New York against your Jets when Brock Wright roamed free for 70 yards. That was a great play call. But the question is, does he just go completely against the analytics on when he's in his own, when he's in his own 20-25 going for it on 4th and 5 with a short field? I think it's a mix. I don't think he's anti, and I do think there's some old school there too, but I do know that he listens to his coaches and everybody upstairs. It's a collaborative effort with that staff, no matter what it is, analytics or not.
Okay, Ben Johnson and Jared Goff. There does seem to be Goff can be a punching bag, but Johnson is brilliant. Can we start with the OC? The expectations for this offense are obviously sky high. Surprise pick of Jahmyr Gibbs. Give us your early return on the Alabama running back and also Ben Johnson.
Well, I mean, we can start with Gibbs. I was stunned when they took him at 12. I never thought in a million years you'd take a running back at 12 and a middle linebacker at 18. I didn't think this was 1987 again, but yet. No, but I'll be serious. I was wrong about it because Jack Campbell has looked very good in the preseason and in training camp and is going to be a fixture. And I'm not going to call him the new Chris Spielman, but he's going to be similar. And then Gibbs is a home run hitter on an offense that a year ago was dink and dunk, didn't turn the ball over a lot. And Goff was solid, especially in the play pass game. Now, Gibbs is this guy. They're going to line up all over the field. He's a toy for Ben Johnson. Am I going to split him out wide on first down, put him in the backfield second round, put him in motion on third down? Whatever it is, Gibbs has a lot of speed and is a home run hitter. And they basically drafted Jahmyr Gibbs and then shipped DeAndre Swift right out of town. So I liked it. And I didn't like it at first, but I like it now as I've seen Gibbs and what he can do. As far as Ben Johnson, I mean, Patrick, when was the last time the Lions had a coordinator other teams wanted, interviewed for head coaching jobs in Indy and Carolina, and then took his name out of the running and said, I want to stay here. We have unfinished business. That's insane. That never happens in Detroit. So staff is good. Johnson is real good with Goff. very, very creative, but also smart. And he's going to be a head coach next year if all goes well this year in Detroit.
I just love how this offense is constructed. So they're spending the most on their offensive line, and it was fantastic last year. And I don't know if it can even be improved upon this year, but if it can, it's the same five guys, especially Decker and Sewell, those two bookend tackles, taking another step forward. Decker's been around a while, but I think it's going to be interesting to see Sewell, who is a relatively young player. And in the receiver group, I mean, man, when they are full strength, Jamison Williams, Marvin Jones, you got Amon-Ra in the slot, Reynolds and Khalif Raymond also probably going to get some time. But the real question, of course, is that synergy with Jared Goff and just how it all looks. But I don't have any questions on the offensive side of the ball. The only question is, can they look better this year? Because that's the one thing about this Lions team. It's not how well they're going to perform. It's the number relative to where they're going to perform. They are now the hunted in a division that they have not been the hunted in a long time. And that, I hope it doesn't change the dynamic, but sometimes teams tighten up when there's a little more on the line. You're expected to win games. So I think the overall vibe to me is just they need to continue to attack because the personnel is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, personnel, Jared, is very good. I think you bring up some great points, and I love the offensive line too. I think the two question marks are depth at receiver with Jamison Williams out until week 7 with that gambling suspension, and then the depth along the offensive line. The starters left to right with Decker, Jackson, Ragnow, Vaitai with Glasgow right there as a swing guy. Graham's been around a long time, and like you said, maybe the best right tackle in football, or at least in the NFC, in Penei Sewell. You can make arguments for others, but Sewell's coming on. But after that, what if Sewell goes down, knock on wood? What if Decker gets hurt? What if Ragnow, who's had some toe and leg and knee injuries, goes down? They don't have a lot of depth along the offensive line. I would look for some sort of deal next week when the rosters get cut down. Maybe a Julian Okwara on the defense gets traded for a backup O-lineman that they can have some depth. They need that. But you're right. The offense was clicking last year. Like I mentioned, play action. And they feel like they've upgraded a tight end with Sam Laporta, the second-round pick from Iowa. So they love him. They feel like they're better there, and they feel like they got more explosiveness with Gibbs over Swift. And even Montgomery out of the backfield as a pass catcher than Jamal Williams. So, yeah, sky's the limit for this offense. They were top 5 last year. Jared Goff just has to stay healthy. Teddy Bridgewater is a nice backup to have as an insurance policy for Goff. And it shows that the Lions are going for it, going out and spending $5 million on a backup quarterback, something they usually do not do. But they feel like with the NFC, with the Eagles and Niners, they feel like they could be that third team, fourth team, and make a little bit of a run.
Matt Dery, they're expected the Lions to win the North at plus 140. Do they win the North?
I think they should. Yeah, I mean, look, if Jared Goff gets hurt, all bets are off, right? I mean, sure. if Aidan Hutchinson and some guys on the defense go down, the first 2 games are not going to be easy. I mean, you got Kansas City on the road with a brand new secondary having to face Mahomes and Kelsey. And then week 2's no slouch. Seattle came into Ford Field last night and put up a 40-burger on them last season. So that's not going to be easy either. And the Fox has that game as their number 1 team with Burkhardt and Greg Olsen. So that's a good first 2 games to find out if your secondary can gel with all the new pieces and if your offense can do what they did a year ago. But this division, Patrick, I'm sorry, I'm not on the Hall of Fields bandwagon like everybody else. I think we need to pump the brakes on Chicago. Minnesota's a mess defensively. And the Packers, I mean, what is Jordan Love? We don't know. Like Green Bay's team around him, I'm just not so sure of a quarterback that hasn't played in 3 or 4 years is the answer yet. Maybe he is, but right now I don't know. So I think the Lions should win the division. And that over-under you have on the screen, 9.5, I'd probably bang the over a little bit on that.
Yeah, they're favored in 12 games on the pre-flop card. So obviously they're probably going to win a game that they're a dog in, and you would assume that they're going to lose a game that they're favored in. But if you're betting it over on a 9.5 and you see a minus sign next to 12 of their games before the season even starts, I think that's very positive. Is there any wild cards here that maybe we didn't mention? Because this has been, I'll be honest, this might have been the longest segment I've ever done on a Detroit Lions team in my entire professional broadcasting career. So I feel like I'm running out of steam here, but please, I guess we'll close with this. And I kind of alluded to it in my last question. The culture that is in Detroit right now, is it ready to be the hunted culture? Because it's a different vibe when you're going into these games every week with the target on your back like Mahomes does every week, whereas for years, the Lions have been overlooked. It is impossible to say that they are overlooked this year.
Well, I mean, the culture is really good, and I think they can handle it because they don't have any a-holes in the locker room. I mean, think about the locker room just 3 years ago with Matt Patricia in his last year, and Patrick had a field day on his old show, just destroying Patricia, and he should have. Darius Slay was unhappy. Quandre Diggs was unhappy. He shipped guys out. Guys were upset. It was nasty. Right now, everybody, all 53 guys on that roster on Tuesday, they're all on the same page. And the Brad Holmes as general manager, Dan Campbell head coach relationship is very strong. There's no infighting. You got John Dorsey in that front office and Ray Agnew, guys that have been general managers or assistant GMs. Everybody's on the same page. It's scary what the culture, how it's going. Now, again, few injuries, few breaks might not go their way like they did a year ago, but they really have a good roster and they really do have a good culture. So Hunter or Hunted, I think they can handle it. And there's some good veterans there like Taylor Decker and mentioned Romeo Okwara before, Alex Anzalone at middle linebacker that can kind of make sure that nobody gets too big for their britches.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.